It has now been almost 3 years since Starfield originally came out and became one of the most hated Bethesda games of all time. In fact, this game is so big and so boring, modders refuse to even fix it. But since that very controversial launch, the dev team has been making a series of updates. Ever since it launched in 2023, they've added in extra vehicles, FOV fighters. They've made it where the game actually runs 60 FPS because, yes, for the first 2 years, this game actually ran at 30 FPS. They've done a bunch of tiny changes to sort of make it not so bad. But today, they finally released it on PlayStation 5. And for some reason, my subscribers have asked that I finally review it again. I beat Starfield at launch. I beat all of it, in fact. I did multiple run-throughs doing the time loop mechanic and tried to get every power-up, every tiny planet, every tiny side quest. And even after that, the more I played Starfield, the more I kind of grew to hate it even more. It's a very 6 out of 10 experience. I'm not going to pretend it's busted. I'm not going to pretend that it's like this completely unfinished thing, but it always had this sense of rawness that just drove me nuts. You know, what really makes Bethesda games fun more than anything else, and I say this as a Bethesda superfan, is that sense of wander. Pick a direction and just walk there, right? In Fallout, in Skyrim, in Elder Scrolls, you just pick a direction and you find a random cave, a journal, a bandit, a side quest. There's always something cool to just see or do or experience. And Starfield has none of that. This is hundreds and hundreds of empty planets in every single direction, to the point in which the developers had to explain the game is boring on purpose. But let's talk about this PlayStation 5 version. Let's talk about these updates, and let's talk about if my thoughts on the game in general are different now that we have 3 years of updates. Let's get into it. Hi, hope you're having a great day. I am DreamcastGuy. Let's see if we can get this video to 2,000 likes. I appreciate you very much. Now, first and foremost, I do want to say that this whole initiative by Microsoft has been very strange in a lot of ways, where Microsoft is taking games, usually, if it doesn't drop day and date, usually they wait until it has a couple updates and then it drops. Stuff like Sea of Thieves. When Sea of Thieves or Forza, when these games are coming to PlayStation, we accidentally get the best version of it because now you already have this back catalog of, years of tweaks and fixes and stuff. The version we get is much better than the launch version, but even when it comes to that with Starfield, I'll be honest, a lot of these updates don't feel that great. When Starfield originally came out, you had to run around on the giant empty planets completely on foot. It felt very slow and very boring. Well, now you have a car, but you're still just driving around on the moon, so it's not exactly that exceptional. The big issue with Starfield that you feel, even with these improved PlayStation 5 Pro graphics, is that as good as this game looks, as good as it plays at times, I do think that just in general, the gunplay is surprisingly tight for a Bethesda title that just doesn't have that sense of motivation to it, right? In this, you're joining this secret group called the Constellations. You're trying to track down these mysterious people called the Starborn and unite all these relics and maybe find sort of the secret of the universe. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the story of Starfield because I'll be honest, even after multiple playthroughs, it really doesn't matter that much. If you've beaten Starfield once or if you've even seen any of it, I just feel like there's no giant cool reveal. Today, they did release a new piece of special DLC content. I'm not buying that. I bought the first expansion, and yeah, that thing was about 3.5 hours. I think it was like a $30 expansion. A lot of people hated it. I kind of appreciated it a bit. The thing was that the first expansion was all on one planet. It's called Shattered Space. The biggest problem with Starfield from a design standpoint is that everything is so spread out. It is a Skyrim level of content blasted across multiple solar systems. So you may find like a little morsel of cool lore or a journal with like crazy reveals and stuff like that, but typically they're literally planets apart. And it felt like Shattered Space tried to address that by putting it all on one planet. Here is a focused, actual classic Bethesda story. And as much as I appreciated them even attempting that, a lot of people just said, okay, this is overpriced, it's short, and honestly, the rewards just aren't worth it. But with all the updates that we're getting to Starfield here, this thing, the biggest update that they just did today is a thing called free lanes. I think a lot of gamers keep hoping that there'd be some sort of like giant fix-it patch when it comes to Starfield, right? The way that we saw with like No Man's Sky or Final Fantasy XIV or Cyberpunk, right? That big 2.0 patch that makes the game, that has like some DNA in it that's very fun and sort of makes the game feel more feature complete. And it seems like that's what this new free update is supposed to be. Free lanes, which dropped today. This is actually on PC PC, it's on Xbox, it's on PS5, but it dropped today. Free lanes now allows you to fly your ship. Now, you're probably saying, how do you have a space travel game where you actually couldn't fly your ship? So the way that Starfield has worked from all time, I still truly cannot believe they did this, is that you automatically fast travel to your ship, you fast travel to orbit, you fast travel to a nearby solar system, and then you fast travel to land. You did not actually fly anywhere. All flying was either ship combat, where most of the time you were pretty much just sitting in one spot shooting people, or the other thing you would do is essentially just like flight was a series of menus. It was literally just fast travel, fast travel, fast travel. Now, originally when this came out, the load times were also pretty dang horrendous. You would spend a solid like 10% of the entire game time playing this game was just load screen, load screen, load screen. Now I'm in orbit, load screen, load screen, load screen. Now I'm back on the next empty, complete planet. I don't know how they even managed to make a game that has so many load screens for so little content. With free lanes, you're now allowed to manually drive to planets. I can't believe this. They even had to name it. It's called cruise mode. You can now travel between planets. This was something that technically you could do. You could fly towards a planet, but you couldn't like land on it. So now you can really fly your ship. This is something that still is funny to me because as interesting as this is as a mechanic, it almost feels kind of pointless at this point. Like, right? Like, the fast travel is still technically faster. So yes, I can fly to a planet, but you've built the whole game around this concept of teleporting from location to location. And a lot of times the ship battles are so annoying. I just think that in general, it just seems like one of those updates that's like, okay, you're adding an optional thing to the game that is interesting that you finally did it. This should have been the default at launch 3 years ago. With this update, they've also added in a new like spaceship port you can go to called Anchor Point. That's cool, I guess. I think my main thing with Starfield in general is that this PlayStation 5 version of it, it's undoubtedly the best version of the game. Honestly, the game looks fantastic on PlayStation 5 Pro, but even then, Bethesda games really aren't about the graphics. A lot of times it's about the world building. It's about those cool plot twists. It's about those really nice sunsets and stuff. And I will say that obviously the big skybox seeing like this blankets of stars and solar systems and rings of planets up there, that all still looks good. And I'm glad that now it's in 4K 60 FPS finally. But I guess I just don't care about that, right? As good as this game looks, it's just so dang empty. And on the PlayStation 5 version, it is cool that now all the audio logs play through the speaker. That's something personally I love a lot. Okay, the light bar lights up when I'm hurt, or the haptic triggers jam when my gun is jammed. That's the kind of stuff that I guess is cool, but really, it just feels like such a tiny, tiny thing. Starfield is very weird because it does in a lot of ways feel like an answer to a question no one asked. What if we made something like Skyrim 60 times bigger, but with the same amount of content? More filler, more nothingness. A lot of this game feels procedurally generated. A lot of times when you land on a planet, there will be a singular moon base or a singular little tiny objective, a point of interest. And when you visit it, you have the choice to wander in a random direction. People have figured out that the maps themselves are randomized. Literally, it'll just generate the planet around you. So even if you like take off from a planet and land on it again, that planet will look completely different even if the points of interest are the same. It's just always building the crappiest, laziest stuff around you. The basic empty moon bases in every direction to barely hold your attention. And I just feel like Starfield, it needed to do more fundamental reworks to make it feel actually good. Starfield has all sorts of cool talent trees. I do like the encourage system of like, oh, if you're using your gun a lot, you can upgrade your assault rifle more. Oh, you're sniping a lot, or you're jetpacking a lot. I do think that there is some interesting ideas of how the upgrades work, but I just still don't care about the final product. If the world feels this vacant, this pointless, this hollow, how can I possibly care? Why would I care about optimizing or building a moon base if nobody's ever going to see it? Why do I care about flying in a random direction if all I'm going to see is more dust and echoes? You know, when Starfield originally came out, I got in some trouble because I said this game feels incredibly unfinished. I said that anybody even defending how unfinished Starfield is stupid. And people got very pissed about this. In fact, IGN even was writing articles about my tweets because some people were saying like, oh, you know, the game has to run bad because it's got so many digital sandwiches and stuff. And now, even playing it here 3 years later, with probably the final major update, maybe there'll be a couple more patches, Starfield still feels incredibly unfinished. It's still a game that I'm not going to pretend is the worst thing I've ever played. It's not something that actually makes me mad. It's the kind of thing that just feels like so much missed potential. Bethesda has made good games. They've made some of the best games of all time. And I feel like Starfield, just as a post-mortem, as an autopsy, even with all this extra 3 years of polish, it still just makes me wish we had something good. So, originally when I beat Starfield back in the day, I gave it a 6 out of 10. And I will say that now, with 3 years of updates, the ability to actually drive now, I do think some of the extra quest lines and stuff they tweaked in there are fine, but I still think it's at best a 7 out of 10. Does it look great on PlayStation 5 Pro? Of course it does. Is it worth the money? $50? I still don't think so. If you get this on sale for $30, I think it's closer to the value, but man, just in general, Starfield, it always just felt a lot like a wet fart. It's Bethesda's lowest rated game of all time. People even debate whether it's actually a financial failure. I'm still in that spot where I just don't really get it. Even as the biggest Bethesda fan, this feels like such a gigantic billion-dollar mess-up. Give us Elder Scrolls 6. This is just some off-the-cuff thoughts, though. How do you feel about Starfield? Did you get it on PlayStation 5? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.